President Cyril Ramaphosa remains ready to offer any assistance in bringing to an end the Russia-Ukraine conflict. That's according to presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwenya, who spoke to SABC News ahead of today's 8th SA-EU summit in Cape Town. The summit takes place at a time when the world is grappling with a number of challenges. Khayelihle Khumalo has more.
Well, absolutely. Quite a very important gathering here in South Africa when you look at the very important strategic partnership between South Africa and European Union, one of the 10 countries in the world that enjoys this particular type of relationship. Obviously, an array of issues to be discussed by the leaders in terms of trade, investment, and also digital economy, but also in the context of the geopolitical instability, among others. But really to explore further in terms of what's really going to be on the agenda, we're joined by the presidential spokesperson, Mr. Magwenya. Thank you so much indeed, sir, and welcome to SABC News. So once again, quite a very important time for South Africa and EU. In fact, I was going through the statement by the EU Commission's President, Dr. von der Leyen, and she was saying South Africa can always count on EU given this unique relationship. Tell us about the importance of this summit.
Kaya, it's a very important summit, but it's also a very important relationship, strategically important relationship. You will know that South Africa is one of about 10 or so countries that have such a strategic partnership with the EU. There are not that many countries, and certainly the only one on the continent that has such a relationship. This is the 8th summit that South Africa will be having with the EU, and we're delighted that it's a summit that we are hosting in the same year. We are also leading as South Africa the G20. And so with respect to the agenda and the issues, certainly we will be looking at the consolidation of the partnership, number one. And number two, we will be looking at various areas of mutual interest and trade in particular. From a South African point of view, we want to obviously harmonize the sort of trade environment we have between ourselves and the EU. But also we want to align the various regulatory pieces so that there is ease of movement of goods between our respective jurisdictions.
And one of the topical issues obviously will have to be Ukraine. We know South Africa is non-aligned, and obviously with EU, I mean, we've seen them ramping up the supports for Ukraine, but big developments coming from Jeddah. South Africa's observations in terms of these talks, these proposed 30-day ceasefire so far?
Kaya, as you know, at some point South Africa was probably the only country that was being criticized for being non-aligned. And it was one of the few countries that had the capacity to speak to both warring parties. President Ramaphosa could pick up a phone and call President Zelensky. He could also do the same with a great deal of confidence and comfort and call President Putin. So we are pleased to see that finally there is this convergence around the position that we've maintained and sustained for the longest of time during the course of this conflict, that says this conflict will only be resolved through dialogue. The only path to peace is that of dialogue. And so we are pleased that we've seen these developments coming out of Jeddah, developments that will lead to an inclusive peace process,